In this lesson we're going to go for an incredibly simple way of making up your own chord progressions. So when I'm teaching, I have to come up with a lot of chord progressions on the spot, usually without actually picking up my guitar. But I'm going to show you here one of the first tricks that I learned to do this. I'm going to be going through the circle of relative minors and majors. Now, if you go to the link in the description box of this video, you will be sent a free copy of the circle of relative minors and majors, as well as some other resources that you might find useful that will accompany this lesson. I'm not going to go into the theory about why the circle works, because this lesson is more about just playing your instrument and putting chord progressions together. So it's not really necessary to know how the circle works, just knowing how to use the circle. I would be interested to know how you come up with your chord progressions. So if you have any tips, tricks or methods that you use, so just please leave a comment below so we can see how you make your progressions. Now, I personally believe you can't really teach creativity. Creativity comes from the individual, and any theory and knowledge you have about your instrument is just really a tool to help you along the way. So just because you know lots of theory doesn't mean you're going to be creative, and just because you don't know lots of theory doesn't mean that you can't be creative. The most important tool you do have is a good set of ears. If something sounds good to you, then it is good. And any knowledge you do have, or any tricks that you may have, they're all just tools to help you to create the things that you want your music to sound like, and to make the process more efficient and quicker. So the circle of relative minors and majors is basically just a circle with all the major chords wrote on the outside of the circle and all the minor chords wrote on the inside of the circle. The circle goes around in fifths. We won't worry too much about the theory behind the circle in this lesson. We just really want to get to know how to use it so you can start coming up with your own progressions that sound pretty good. Every major chord has a relative minor chord that contains a lot of the same notes. Sometimes you could think of it as like its tonal opposite, but they always sound good together. So the way I'd say to start using the circle is to pick a number between 1 and 12, because it's just like a clock face, there's 12 places to start from. So if we say 12 o'clock, which is C, C which is on the outside of the circle, so that's a C major chord. And then on the inside of that we have a minor chord, A minor. And you can hear they sound really good together. So that's a great place to start. So the major chord, then play the minor chord, and it always sounds really nice. So we've chosen 12 o'clock, which is C. Now we can also use the chords to either side of the C. So you notice directly adjoined to it on the left side is the F. So we could try putting the C and the F together. So let's see how that sounds. Which sounds pretty good. We can also use to the right of C, which is G. So we'll see how that sounds. Also works really well. So we can also use everything that's adjoined to C on the inside of the circle. So we've already tried A minor, but we'll just play it again so you can hear how it sounds. So C to A minor. Now to the left of C, but on the inside of the circle we've got D minor, so we'll see how those two sound together. So we also have on the right hand side of C, but inside the circle we've got E minor, so we could try C to E minor. Now I think you should agree that every one of these chords work together. We've basically just shown you how C correlates to each of those chords, but we can also use them in different orders. So we could try maybe going from C to the left of C to F, then we could go straight down to D minor, and then we could finish by playing E minor, so on the right of the circle but inside, so minor chord. So C to F to D minor to E minor. And you can see it's a really easy way of coming up with chord progressions. You could just change the order. You don't always have to start on C either. You could change those round. So this time, why don't I start on the inside of the circle? So we'll start with A minor, then I'll go to E minor, followed by an F again, and then we'll finish on the G. And you can see they just work. So anything that's adjoined to the number that you've picked on the circle, inside or outside the circle, will work together. So it's then just a case of finding what you think sounds good. When I first started using the circle, I wanted to really make sure that it didn't take away from my creativity. So I used it more of when I knew I needed another chord, but I didn't know which chord to choose. So say I had started making a progression which was just A major to E major. Which I've used my ears to create that, so I've basically found two chords that I like the sound together. So I've used A and E because I like the sound of it, but now I'm thinking that the chord progression needs to go somewhere else. It needs another chord to put on the end of that. So because this is only a 2-chord progression, you could use either of those 2 chords as the start of the circle, of what number you're choosing on the circle. So the trick here is to experiment. You will find different chords from different points of the circle, but A and E are next to each other on the circle, so you could use either of those 2 points to choose your chords. But for the sake of this example, let's just start by using A. So you'll notice to the left of A I have a D chord, so I'm going to try just putting D at the end of that chord progression, so A to E to D. Which I think sounds pretty good. Now that would work really well. I'm hearing that I feel like it wants to go back to A there. So I'm going to try making that my progression. So A to E to D back to A. Now for me, that sounds like what I'm looking for. If it wasn't what you were looking for, try another chord. Anything that's adjoined to that A will work. And if you don't like any of those sounds, try thinking of it from E, and then anything adjoining to E. And see which ones you find. You will usually find that you do find a chord that you're looking for. Now this method is also great for if you do have a chord progression altogether, but you want to make another chord progression. So say we have a verse progression. We'll call it a verse just for the sake of something to call it, or section 1 of verse, we'll call it verse. So if I had something in the key of G, so we're thinking now at 1 o'clock on the circle. So the chord progression, let's say it goes from G major to D major to A minor to C major. Which works great as a verse, I like that. But now we want to come up with a chorus section. So what you can do straight away is think, well, the chords that are in the progression, if I keep the same chord progression but just change 1 or 2 of those chords. So to do that, you can literally just go onto the inside of the circle, so you take the relatives. So for a chorus section, we could change bar 1 from a G major to an E minor because it's just inside it on the circle. So that would be E minor, then down to D again. So it's still got similarities to the first chord progression. Sometimes when making a chorus, you want it to have some form of similarities to the verse, but just have enough of a change there that it does sound like the music is changing. So we'll try replacing the G with the E minor, and that'll go down to D as it did before, then A minor, and up to C. Which works really well, I think. That would work great as a chorus. But let's try changing another chord in there as well, just to try something different. So let's change bar 3 and 4. So on bar 3 we were playing an A minor. Now if we change that to its relative, that'd be C major. Which I think will work fine. So E minor to D major to C major. But now the last bar was C major, so we can keep that the same, see how that sounds. I think that works great, so how about I try playing the verse progression twice, and then the chorus progression twice, and end on the key chord, so G major. Now I think that sounds pretty good, so that would be something that I would probably work with, but I also keep in mind of what the vocalists are doing and what other things are going on. So usually by playing these chord progressions, you can find the chords that you're looking for. You've probably noticed as you go around the circle, the further around you get, the more sharps and flats that you encounter. So that generally does mean that you do need to know about bar chords, or at least how chords relate to each other with a capo. So if you've downloaded the free circle that's in the description box below, you will also get a free download of a bar chord sheet. Now the bar chord sheet that I've given has basically has a diagram of all the notes on the top 2 strings. So that gives you the positions. So if you were, say, looking for a G sharp, you could literally just look on that sheet and you could find there's a G sharp on the A string and a G sharp on the E string. So let's say you found the G sharp on the E string, so that's at the 4th fret. So that's kind of a key of where to start your bar from. So it's on the E string at the 4th fret, so you make your bar from there all the way down. And then there's 2 chord boxes for each of these strings. So on the 6th string you'll have a chord box for a major shape and a chord box for a minor shape. So if you end up needing to find a G sharp major chord, then you take the G sharp, which we've already found, and then use the shape of the major shape. If you're looking for G minor, then you just take the G still in the bar still in the exact same place, but you then make the minor shape. And you do the same thing with the 5th string root, so you find G sharp, which is actually at the 11th fret. So that's where you make your bar, and if you notice it's from the A string, so you're not actually playing the top string. So you make your bar there. If it's a major shape, you make the major shape from the box. And if it's a minor, you make the minor shape. I won't go into any more details of bar chords here. I'll probably make another lesson purely on bar chords and link it to this video. But it's pretty easy to work out where each of the chord shapes goes if you've got that chart. So make sure you're not avoiding using the sharps or the flats, because it does help to learn them, and using this method will mean you get more used to these bar chord shapes, which is always a good thing. And I mentioned before, it's sharps and flats, so the right side of the circle contains sharp keys and the left side of the circle contains flat keys. Now I've also included the notes on the top 2 strings, but with flats on there instead. So if you are picking notes from the flat side, you can refer to the sheet with the flats on there to make life a bit easier. Now I hope that you found that this method is very simple to use and is a great place to start by finding what chords do sound good together. Now I'm not saying that this is a rule that you have to follow for making chord progressions. Remember what I've said constantly through this video, it's always about your ears. So if you like the sound of a C major going to an A major, then it's good. Don't think that it has to be C major to an A minor just because the circle tells you so. Like I said, this is not a rule, it's just a tool. So I hope the circle gets you going at writing some of your own chord progressions and maybe even some of your own songs. So thanks very much for watching the video. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can keep up to date with all the videos as I upload them. And again, thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next time.